U.S. Federal Reserve is poised to announce today the results of the two-day policy meeting. Since their last meeting, economic data has presented a more complicated outlook, with unsettled trade policies contributing to the uncertainty. Officials could point to a slowdown in first quarter GDP, along with declining business and consumer confidence, as reasons to consider rate cuts. Alternatively, strong employment data, healthy consumer spending, and an anticipated tariff-driven rise in inflation may encourage them to hold off on any changes. Moving on to North America, where Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has said that no decisions were made on tariffs during his meeting in Washington on Tuesday with U.S. President Donald Trump. He confirmed the two leaders agreed to continue talks, especially focusing on North American auto industry and the alignment of incentives between Canada and the United States. Carney also reiterated that Canada is not for sale, responding to Trump's previous comments about Canada potentially becoming the 51st state.
Leaders of two sovereign independent nations. And I want to thank the President.
Statistics Canada has revealed that the country's trade deficit narrowed to $506 million Canadian dollars in March. Imports of goods dropped 1.5% in March, driven by a 2.9% slump in shipments from the United States. Exports to the United States dropped by 6.6%, but were almost compensated by an increase in exports to the rest of the world. Canada's overall exports for March came in at least 69.9 billion Canadian dollars, down from 70.04 billion Canadian dollars in February. However, imports fell in both value and volume terms. Moving on to Europe, where United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer has defended a newly signed UK-India trade agreement, rejecting claims that it undermines British workers by offering tax exemptions to some Indian workers. The exemption, part of the Double Contribution Convention (DCC), is reciprocal and also benefits British workers in India. Though largely downplayed in the United Kingdom, India hailed the clause as a major victory. The government estimates the DCC will cost around $100 million annually, but maintains the deal overall would support British jobs and trade growth. The Russian Finance Ministry has announced running a budget deficit of 3.5 trillion rubles, or 1.5% of gross domestic product in the first 4 months of the year. Russia's finance ministry also raised the 2025 budget deficit estimate to 1.7% of GDP, or 0.5%, after reducing the energy revenues forecast by 24%. The ministry said the advance payments to finance the budget expenditure in January were behind the increase, as well as the decrease in oil and gas revenue inflows. The ministry added that it will not affect the execution of the target parameters of the structural balance for the year 2025 overall. China's central bank has announced a raft of stimulus measures, including interest rate cuts and major liquidity injection, as the country steps up efforts to soften the economic damage caused by the trade war with the United States. They also said that the government would increase the amount of money available for the factory upgrades and other innovation in elder care and other service businesses. The announcements came shortly after United States and Chinese officials said that the two countries will meet this weekend for talks. China is expanding a pilot scheme that allows insurance companies to invest more in the stock markets. China's National Financial Regulatory Administration, led by Li Yuan's, announced approval for an additional 60 billion yuan from long-term insurance funds to invest in stocks. Lee also highlighted efforts to stabilize the property market amid pressure from the United States' tariff policies. Global rating agency Moody's has warned that any sustained escalation in tensions could severely undermine Pakistan's already fragile economic stability. Moody cautioned that further flare-ups could impair access to external financing and put additional pressure on Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves, which, as just over $50 billion, remain far below what is required to meet external debt obligations in the coming years. Moody's, however, noted that in contrast, India's reserves are robust, exceeding $688 billion. It further highlighted that the macroeconomic conditions in India remain stable due to the strong public investment and resilient private consumption, despite the possibility of higher defense spending slowing its fiscal consolidation.